Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Redmond, welcome.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, perfect.
Hold on 1 second. I'm going to go into the microphone so I can hear you better. We are sorry that we cannot meet you for this important interview in person, but you know the reason why. We are meeting virtually.
Of course.
And thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Gail Feckley, and I am the chairperson of Ways. The clerk of Ways and Means is Councilor Claire Frieda, and the third member is Councilor John Dombrowski. So, Edmund, we have been asked by the mayor to confirm your appointment to the position of treasurer collector for the city of Leominster for a term of 3 years, effective October 5th, 2020. We have received your resume, and I'm sure that we've all carefully reviewed it. And what we would want to do here this evening, since this is our first foray with you, is to have you give us a little bit of background, even though we have your resume, lesson on some information that you think would be important for us to know. We also will then have questions for you. And just like I said, just so that you can, we can get to know you and the public can get to know you. If you are appointed treasurer, you'll be appointed as the treasurer, for 3 years, and it's an important position. It's important that the public knows your background. So if you want to just take it away, I give you the floor.
Sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time this evening and your consideration. I grew up in Charlton, Massachusetts. I graduated from Worcester State College in 2004. I really got my first taste of the municipal world when I was working for Vadar Systems, which is a municipal software company, similar to Munis, what the city uses currently for their municipal finance needs. It was evident to me at that point when I was working at Vadar, I'd been there for almost 8 years, that I was really more interested in the municipal finance side of it than the actual software side of it. I got my first municipal job as the assistant treasurer collector for the town of Shrewsbury. From there, I moved to the town of Boxborough, where I became their treasurer collector. And then currently, I am the treasurer collector for the town of Bellingham.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've gone step by step up through.
Each move, I guess, has been just kind of like the progression. I was the assistant, then I moved to a small town, but I was the treasurer. Then I moved to a bigger town where I'm the treasurer currently, and now making this move to a city ultimately is where I want to be. Like I mentioned to the interview team, I'm looking for, my, quote unquote, forever job. And I had mentioned to David when he was doing the interview that I'm hoping, to be in his seat, 29 years from now, interviewing my ultimate replacement. So that's, I've done a lot of research on the city and, the fact that, David has been there for so long and,
right.
Anybody that I've spoken to, it seems that, the core pieces of the city have been in place for a long time. That's what attracted me to the position to begin with.
Right. And for the public and anybody that doesn't know, the David that you're referring to is Mr. David LaPlante, who is our retired treasurer. So you spoke and interviewed with him. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. So that's a good segue to my first question, actually. How do you feel, what do you feel would be the major differences between being the treasurer collector for a city in the Commonwealth as opposed to a town?
Sure, absolutely.
And also, I'm going to also add an addendum to that question. Do you find that there might be some responsibilities that in the city are handled by the comptroller as opposed to the treasurer? And that is the question that you can answer, because I don't know the answer to that, so you can answer.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
From one thing that I figured out through my time working at both on the software side and then also on the municipal side, is every town, city, municipality, whatever you want to call it, handles responsibilities differently. As far as, in one place, the town accountant / comptroller may handle this, but somewhere else, the treasurer collector handles it. When I worked in Boxborough, I was literally the only person in my office. So
Okay.
I handled all the taxpayers coming in to the window making their payments. Plus, I was the one processing payroll. I was onboarding new employees. I was doing pretty much anything that could particularly fall within the purview of the treasurer, and even what John does on the comptroller side as well. To answer your initial question about moving up to a city, one of the big things is just the volume as far as population and things like that go. I worked in Shrewsbury, which is a similar, while they're not a city, from a population standpoint, they're about 35,000 residents, where I know here in Leominster, it's more than that. So I'm familiar with the workload that comes with representing that many citizens at one time. Luckily, from a lot of the responsibilities in the day-to-day that you're doing isn't all that different from one place to another. It's just the magnitude of it, as far as amount of employees, amount of residents, budgetary amounts, things of that nature. It's all pretty much done exactly the same way. Luckily, just there might be a few more zeros put on to the end of it. So it's not something that I take lightly by any means. There is going to be a learning curve, but in my conversations that I've had with both David and John, there's going to be some, I'm going to have the amount of resources I need to get me up to speed as quickly as possible.
Okay. So the responsibilities would basically be the same, but as far as town, city, but maybe in the city it could be magnified just because of the amount of little dollars you're working with.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. All right. So just another. I have actually two more brief questions before I'm going to hand you over to Council Frida.
Sure.
In your resume, you mentioned that in the town of Boxborough, you monitored the bond rating. Now, Leominster is very proud of their bond rating, as you must know. And
yes,
so can you just give me a little, and the public an idea of, how one monitors bond rating?
Sure, absolutely. So I worked very closely with my town administrator and the town accountant, and also our financial advisors. Just as far as we would have at least monthly, sometimes quarterly, depending on the time of year meetings, just making sure that we were doing the necessary things to keep our rating where it should be, as far as, our collections and debt and things of that nature. I know from experience that, not that a lot of other places don't necessarily care about their bond rating. I'm sure that every municipality cares about their bond rating, but not every municipality goes out of their way to make sure that they're keeping their bond rating where it should be throughout the year, and realizing what pitfalls you could run into if you're not paying attention during the course of the year. So that's something that I've had instilled in me since I started in the municipal world, is, these are the certain factors that can play into your bond rating going up or going down. So these are the things that we need to monitor on a regular basis.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Well, that makes sense. And then my last question for you for now
Madam
is
Chairwoman?
under education, so Worcester State College, May of 2004, Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and then Massachusetts Collectors and Treasurers Association. Can you just get into a little bit about the CMMT certification exam?
Yep, absolutely.
Mr. Redmond,
yeah.
Before you answer that question, it is 7 o'clock, so we're going to open the meeting now formally,
Okay.
and then we'll go into recess, and you can respond to the chairwoman's question. Okay, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if all would rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
of the United States
the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'll now take a roll call of councilors in attendance, starting with Councilor Frida.
Present.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Present.
Councilor Shalafo Zephyr.
Present.
Councilor Feckley.
Present.
Councilor Angelini.
Present.
Councilor Ardinger.
Present.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Present.
Councilor David Cormier.
Present.
I shall be recorded as present. All 9 councilors are in attendance. Does the chairwoman of records have a report?
I do, Mr. President. I have the minutes of the regular city council meeting of September 14th, 2020. I find them to be in order and ask that they be placed on file.
Very well. Thank you very much, Councilor. I'll entertain a motion to go into recess.
I'll make that. So moved. Councilor David Cormier.
Okay, Frank, you want to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of recess, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed?
Aye.
By a vote of 9-0, we are in recess. Mr. Redmond, you can now answer the chairwoman's question.
Sure. So to answer your question regarding the Mass Treasurer Collectors Association, I actually just took the certification exam for the treasurer's side last Friday, a couple days ago. So I should know within about a week or two whether or not I passed the exam and will receive my certification.
Okay.
The way the training works is it's a 3-year program. We typically run it at UMass Amherst in August. You go for about 3 days. You take classes all leading up to the certification exam. So then this summer coming up, I will start on the tax collector side of it. So then 3 years, once I finish those classes in 3 years, I will then take the certification exam for the tax collector side as well.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot. How do you think you did?
Honestly, I think I did all right. Luckily there's a lot of resources out there as far as the exam goes. There was a review that was run by Bartholomew and Company, and then one that was also run by the Mass Treasurer Collectors Association. And I mean, they're not out there to trick you. It's literally, they just want to make sure that you know the rules and regulations of being a treasurer. So it's kind of one of those things. It's either you know it or you don't.
Right.
And you need a 75 or higher to pass the exam. No, I think I did all right. Hopefully we'll find out relatively soon.
Okay. Well, good luck. All right. Well, thank you very much for answering all my questions for now. And I am going to turn this interview over to Councilor Claire Frida, who is the Clerk of Ways and Means. Councilor Frida?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Mr. Redmond. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good, thanks. I just have a couple of questions. They're more observations, I guess. In the past 4 years, it appears that you've been in 3 different communities.
Sure.
Can you just explain that a little bit? I mean, I know in Shrewsbury you were the assistant, and you explained that was similar to Leominster in size, but you were an assistant treasurer and it was a town. So if you could kind of explain the changes in 4 years' time, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, like you mentioned, I was in Shrewsbury. I was the assistant treasurer there, assistant treasurer collector rather. I was there for just about 2 years, and an opportunity came up for me to become a treasurer collector. I wasn't going to get that opportunity in Shrewsbury, so I took the opportunity and I went to Boxborough. I quickly found out, like I had mentioned previously, that Boxborough is, a very small town, not a lot of resources. So I was the only person in the office handling, the work of at least 3 or, sometimes 4 or 5 different people or positions at any one time. So when I got the opportunity to go to Bellingham, which is a bigger town, and able to have an actual staff helping and working under me, so that I was able to work on more of the higher end side of the treasurer collector's office, I took that opportunity, where I've been for about 1.5 years now. And, an opportunity like working, not necessarily just even in a city, but working in a place like Leominster doesn't come along too often. Obviously, with your current treasurer, has been there for 29 years, so it's not an opportunity to take lightly if that comes up. So I wanted the opportunity to better myself, and also getting to ultimately the end goal, which is working for a city and a municipality, the caliber of Leominster. So that's kind of my progression, I guess, if that makes sense.
I understand that, but when you left Shrewsbury to go to Boxborough, thinking it was a step up, did you not realize when you were applying there that it was more of a one-man department, that you'd be doing so much at that point?
It wasn't necessarily that it was all one. They were also severely behind on a lot of things because it was a single person office. So a lot of the time that I spent was actually catching up work from my predecessor at the time. It wasn't necessarily presented to me that I would be by myself all of the time. I was supposed to have some part-time help, but there was some budgetary issues that came up, and they weren't able to actually give me that help, which also, prompted the move to Bellingham, because I knew ultimately, despite the fact that I did enjoy working in Boxborough, I got a really good relationship with my town administrator and my town accountant, along with the select board there. I just knew that ultimately, long term, it wasn't going to work for me just to be basically by myself. So that was what prompted the move. So to answer your question, while I knew I was going to have limited resources, I guess I wasn't totally aware of how limited those resources would be.
Okay. And what was your relationship like with the town administrator and the select board in Shrewsbury?
Very well, very good. They were very happy for me that I was able to move on and get the opportunity to become a treasurer in another town. They had a longtime treasurer there when I was hired, and she had retired, and they hired somebody else who was going to be there long term. So I knew that if I wanted to get a treasurer position, it might not necessarily be in Shrewsbury. So they helped me as far as teaching me a lot of what I needed to know in order to further my career.
And when did you start? Was it 3 years you said you started for your certification?
Yes. Yep.
And
yep. I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I had started my first year in Shrewsbury was when I started taking the classes. I would have taken the exam in August, but obviously they canceled everything due to the pandemic. So they just got around to doing the exam last week. So.
And what's the population of Bellingham and Foxborough?
The population in Boxborough is about 6,000, and the population in Bellingham is 16,000.
Okay. All right, that probably covers my questions for now. Thank you.
Okay.
If I have anything, I'll come back to it.
Okay, I'll set Counselor Frida then. Okay. Counselor Dombrowski.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Raymond.
Good evening.
I just want to get an idea of how able you are to hit the ground running. How do the software programs at Bellingham and the prior places of employment compare with what's being used in Leominster?
Sure. The programs that you use currently in Leominster, I've used in Shrewsbury as far as Munis on the municipal finance side, and then I know the city also uses Harper's for the payroll services, and I actually implemented Harper's payroll in Boxborough while I was there.
And okay. So you're familiar. You're very familiar with them then.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, and your last place of employment in Bellingham, how many employees were you directly supervising versus how many you're going to be supervising in Leominster?
Sure. I had 3 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees that I was directly responsible for.
Okay.
And I actually, when I was in Shrewsbury as well, actually, despite being the assistant, I was actually in charge of the staff there as well, which was 4 full-time and 1 part-time employee as well.
And if you don't mind me asking, where do you currently live?
I live in West Boylston.
Oh, okay, so fairly close.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
And this certification that you were talking about with Councilor Feckley, is that a requirement in the Commonwealth for taking this position that you pass that certification?
From what I've seen, most municipalities require it. I don't believe it's actually a requirement across the board, as far as I know. Any place that I've ever worked, it's been a requirement to at least have it within 3 years of your start date. Typically, because assuming you've taken the classes before, it's going to take you at least 3 years to finish the classes and take the exam. But as far as I know, I don't believe it's an actual requirement, but most municipalities do require it on their side, I guess.
Okay, and does Leominster require that?
As far as I know, yes. I honestly couldn't tell you for certain, but I believe that is the case.
Okay, now, let's say if you don't pass that exam, what happens next as far as retaking it? Can you retake it right away? Is there a time period you have to wait? Do you have to retake classes?
No, I wouldn't have to retake the classes. Unfortunately, they only offer the exam once a year. So I would just have to take it again the next time they offer it, which would most likely be in August of next year, assuming everything stays on the same schedule that it had been pre-COVID.
Okay. And it sounds to me like the other places you worked had a a board of selectmen that were overseeing things, whereas Leominster has a mayor.
Yes.
In fact, a very long-serving mayor. Have you been in that position before, or have you always reported to a board of selectmen?
No, actually, when I worked in Shrewsbury, they have a town manager. So I would report to the town manager as opposed to the select board. But in the other two places, it was a select board that I ultimately reported to.
Okay. And you, I'm assuming that the current staff will be staying in place?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Mr. Redmond, I wish you luck. I would tell you that I considered Mr. LaPlante to be an exemplary employee, and so you have big shoes to fill as far as I'm concerned. But I wish you luck, and thank you for coming in for the interview.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilor Feckley, I have one more question if I could.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Frida.
Although it's not directly related to the office, do you have any experience with tax increment financing?
Some, yes, not a ton. That's one of those things that the offices I've worked in didn't deal with as often. I do know of it. I understand aspects of it, but I haven't had a ton of experience with it.
That would be the difference in being in a 16,000 or a 6,000 population community that wouldn't offer many of them, I wouldn't think.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I could do this two ways. I could go around the table. I think I will. Starting with Councilor David Cormier. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Redmond?
Thank you, Councilor Feckley. I do. Hi, Mr. Redmond. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
Very good, thank you. I just have something that comes to mind that would be one of your responsibilities and duties. Have you, by default or volunteered, I guess it would have been voluntary if it wasn't by default, any positions where you have been, have you been on a retirement board?
Yes, when I was in Shrewsbury had their own retirement board, so I was a de facto member of that by being well, I take that back. When the treasurer was the de facto member. When the treasurer retired, I stepped in and was a member of that retirement board. And then anywhere else I've been, they actually have a like a county retirement board where I haven't necessarily been involved with it as much, but I sit in on all of the county meetings that came up. I was more directly involved with it in Shrewsbury.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because you will be sitting on our retirement board, as I'm sure you know, yourself, Comptroller, and then there are two members that are elected,
Yep.
and then there's one that is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council. So, I was just wondering what your experience was with that, and if you've been brought up to speed on what goes on the Leominster Retirement Board. I know that there's been controversy over the years, as there probably is in a lot of places, and just wanted to kind of get a feel of what your thoughts are about the Retirement Board, in terms of making decisions on there.
Sure. No, I mean, it's obviously it's not an easy thing to deal with a lot of times, just because you've worked for a long time, and now you're not working, and you're depending on other people ultimately to get you the benefits that you've worked 30 plus years in order to get. So I in my experience, we've had individual, I wouldn't say individual meetings, but we've had meetings with inviting as many retirees as possible to come in and explain any issues that they're running into, and then, reaching out to some of the bigger retirement boards, the county boards and things of that nature. I try to keep up to date on things like that anyways. I'm always reading minutes of different municipalities meetings, as far as whether it's retirement or, really any type of committee that I might potentially be involved in, just to see what they're dealing with as well, and see if it's something that the municipality I'm in is also dealing with, or something that we may potentially have to deal with in the future.
Okay. All right. Now, what town was it again that you were on the committee on the retirement board? You said
that was in Shrewsbury.
Okay. That's all for now, Madam Clerk. If you want to move on, and if I have any other questions, you can come back to me. But I'm good for now, Madam Chair, I should say. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Redmond, I'm just a quick question, and I'm just curious as to accessibility of the public, or basically educating the public. What are your views? What are your positions on that accessibility, that instructing the public so that they have a better working knowledge of what goes on in the office?
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that I did when I started in Boxborough was we had a very underutilized webpage. So I started putting up different, articles that I came across that might be of interest, or, as new information was coming out from the Department of Revenue, kind of just keeping the public up to date on everything. It's not just a cliche. My office is always open. I realize that ultimately, you are working for the taxpayers, and they, have a right to come in and speak to you. And I'm open to it. I'd like to hear what anybody has to say, as far as whether it be, a taxpayer, an employee, a town employee. I'm always open to suggestion and conversation in order to make sure that the right information is going out. We had, obviously, with everything that had been happening with the pandemic, we made it a point to get as much information out there as possible about, when the tax bills were going to be due, and if they were going to be deferred, and how long they were going to be deferred for. Even when I was working from home for months, I was on my phone every day with taxpayers who had different questions about things, as far as ones that had payment plans set up and how it would affect them. And I think a lot of times just an actual sit-down conversation with somebody goes a lot further than, going through numerous emails and trying to avoid it. Sometimes just sitting down and talking to somebody for 5 minutes can go a long way, and it shows that there is an actual person there. It's not just an office trying to, get you to pay your tax bill. There's an actual person behind that. So I think that goes a long way.
Great. That's a very thoughtful response. Thank you. Madam Chair, I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Cormier. Councilor Ardinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have to say that your committee and the two preceding councilors have done a great job of asking Mr. Redmond questions, and I am very impressed with his answers so far, and I really would not ask any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Angelini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Redmond, good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me out tonight.
I just have a couple questions. The journey that found you here before the council this evening, I think you had mentioned earlier that you were interviewed by Mr. David LaPlante prior to coming down before the council. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
were you interviewed by the mayor as well?
I was, yes.
And you spoke with Mr. Richard, or were you interviewed?
I was interviewed by him. I was interviewed by him as well.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that that certainly gives me a great deal of comfort, knowing that those three individuals met with you, interviewed you, and felt comfortable enough to send your name down to this council for confirmation. If indeed this council chooses to confirm your appointment, I welcome you to the city and look forward to meeting you in person, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor Angelini. Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr.
Thank you very much, Councilor Feckley. Mr. Redmond, thank you very much for spending time with us this evening. We really appreciate it. I certainly appreciate your time and your interest in coming, to talk with us tonight. I just have a quick follow-up to Councilor Angelini's question, if I may. So in addition to the treasurer, the comptroller, the mayor, was there anybody else? I believe that the HR person, Ms. Hurley, was also involved in your interview process. And how about the purchasing agent, Mr. Chapdelaine?
Yes, he was as well as Mr. Connor from the assessor's office.
Assessor's office. That's great. Well, that is quite a thorough vetting process, and if you go ahead.
No, I was going to say it was honestly, it was kind of scary at first. You walk in, you see all the people there, but at the same time, I think it was great because it showed how much the city cares about who's actually being put in the seat. And it gave me a lot more confidence in the fact that after speaking with them that, if I were offered the position, that I would be able to work with them and know that they care just as much as I do about getting the job done. So it was actually kind of refreshing in that respect.
I'm very happy to hear you say that because the treasurer's department is so critical to the city's successful operation. And as was noted earlier, Mr. LaPlante has been a fixture and an extremely reliable and important part of the city's management team. So you are indeed going to have to fill big shoes. But I've been very impressed, this evening with your responses to various council members and the committee. And it strikes me that, you're bringing relevant, important experience to the position, but also coming to a bigger community, I think, will certainly present challenges to you, but I think it'll also provide opportunities, hopefully, for you to learn and grow. And you're working with a tremendously experienced team in the city, so you'll have plenty of support, I think.
No, absolutely. That was one of the things that attracted me to the position to begin with.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again. I appreciate your time this evening and look forward to voting on your confirmation.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor. And Council President Bedanza.
Thank you, Chairwoman Feckley. Good evening, Mr. Redmond.
Hello.
My question is, can you just give us a little bit of a summary of what I'm sure you've discussed with Mr. LaPlante transition process? What will that be like? What's his availability? How long will he be training you and be available to you to help you meet the challenges of this new job?
Sure, absolutely. I'm not 100% sure as to how long he is staying on, but I do know he is going to be, from what I was told, available to me at least for a few months, if nothing else. And he even said in the conversations I've had with him, he's honestly only a phone call away. If I had any questions on anything or anything like that. But my understanding is that it would at least be for at least a few months, if not longer, because he'll be, I guess, working on some other projects with the comptroller's office as well. So So, like I said, unfortunately, I don't have an exact answer for you, but that's the understanding I have of it anyway.
Well, that's helpful, and obviously a lot of us know David pretty well, and we know his work ethic and his concerns and cares about the city of Leominster. So, if he tells you he'll be available, I'm sure he will, and that's good to know. I'm sure that's valuable information for all of us. So, thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
Madam
No
Chairwoman, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you very much. Members of my committee, do we have any other questions for Mr. Redmond? Hear none. Going around again, anybody have a question or comment for Mr. Redmond? Okay, Mr. Redmond, thank you very, very much. I believe that you have gone through this interview this evening most admirably. Of course, it's not as difficult to be on the phone as it is to see 9 pairs of glaring eyes at you.
I'm not going to lie. It did make it a little easier for me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for answering all of our questions. I believe that the council is satisfied at this point, and I will ask the president to move up the matter of your appointment after we've done a little bit of council business this evening. So if you want to stay tuned, please do.
Absolutely.
And good luck to you in any event.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Chairwoman. That can be done. But next, we are going to hold the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for any member of the audience to speak on a matter specifically listed on the council agenda. Speakers will be asked to come to the microphone and state their formal name and address along with identifying the specific item or items they wish to address. Each speaker is respectfully asked to keep their comments within a 2-minute time frame. The council will not be responding or answering any questions. However, at the discretion of the council president, clarification may be given. Is there any member of the public on the line that wishes to address the city council in the public forum? And a second time, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the city council in the public forum? And a third and final time, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the city council in the public forum? Hearing none, I will declare the public forum closed. We are now in session, starting with communications from the mayor and C18.
C18, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests an appropriation of $231,000 be made to the ITTF expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund, regarding funding for the street and firewall police.
C18 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course.
Very well. C18 is given regular course. Moving on to C19.
C19, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests an appropriation of $68,450 be made to the Police Department overtime account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund, regarding firearms training for fiscal year 2021 new requirements.
C19 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Once again, Mr. President, first time on the calendar, regular course.
Very well. C19 has been given regular course. Moving on to C20.
C20, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests an appropriation of $23,638 be made to the Police Department expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund, regarding ammunition and equipment as attached.
C20 is also referred to the Chairman of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course.
Very well. C20 has been given regular course. C21.
C21, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, requests an appropriation of $52,000 be made to the Municipal Building Maintenance Expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund, regarding new copper gutters and matching slate on City Hall roof for repairs where needed.
C21 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
First time on the calendar, Mr. President, regular course.
Very well. C-21 has been given regular course. C22.
C22, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $50,000 be made to the forestry expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund.
C-22 is referred to the Chairman of Finance.
First time on the calendar, Mr. President, regular course.
C-22 has been given regular course. Moving on to C-23.
C-23, a resolution vote of support to enter into a tax increment financing agreement, TIF, with Gerard Tool Corporation located at 551 to 602 Research Drive, Leominster, Mass.
C-23 is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will be regular course with a referral to the treasurer and the collector. And I would ask that Madam Clerk invite some of the principals or their representatives to our next meeting so we can ask them questions.
Okay.
Okay. Would you consider, Madam Chairwoman, also referring that to the assessor's office?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, C-23 is given regular course with a referral to the assessor's office, treasurer and collector's office, and an invitation to the principals to attend our next meeting. Moving on to petitions, first time on the agenda, starting with 14-21.
14-21, election order. An order by the City of Leominster relative to the state election, November 3rd, 2020.
14-21 is referred to the Chairwoman of Ways and Means.
Regular course, Mr. President.
Very well. 14-21 is given regular course. 15-21.
15-21, Susan Shalafo Zephyr, Counselor at Large, and Mark C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Counselor, request to amend Article 3, Division 2, Section 13-34, no parking on certain streets of the amended ordinances of the City of Leominster to add no parking along the side of Chestnut Street for cars heading east, extending approximately 40 feet up Chestnut Street from the intersection of Chestnut Street and Pleasant Street.
15-21 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with a referral to the Leominster Police Department. And I believe we need to vote on the public hearing for October 13th, 2020 at 6:53 p.m.
Okay, so the chairman is recommending that public hearing date as well as a referral to the police department. All those in favor of establishing the hearing date for 15-21 on October 13th, 2020 at 6:53 p.m., please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, 15-21 is given regular course with a hearing date of October 13th, 2020 at 6:53 p.m. Moving on to 16-21.
16-21, Mark C. Bedanza, Ward 4 Counselor, request to amend Section 13-34 of the Leominster Revised Ordinances as follows, by adding a no parking zone on Adams Street, southerly side, beginning at the intersection with Cotton Street, then westerly to the intersection of Bowen Place.
16-21 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Regular course with a referral to the Leominster Police Department, and we need to vote to establish a public hearing on October 13th, 2020 at 6:54 p.m.
You heard the suggestion by the Chairman of Legal Affairs to establish a public hearing on 16-21 on October 13th, 2020 at 6:54 p.m. All those in favor of establishing that hearing date, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the public hearing on 16-21 has been established for 10/13/20 at 6:54 p.m. with a referral to the police department. Moving on to 17-20.
17-20, Stephen Ferricelli of Ferricelli Oil Co., Inc., request to amend flammable liquids license from 335,000 gallons to 575,000 gallons of flammable liquids.
17-20 is referred to the Chairman of Legal Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President. First time on the calendar, regular course with a referral to the Director of the health department and the fire chief. And we also need to vote to establish a public hearing. The suggested hearing date, October 13th, 2020 at 6:52 p.m.
Very well. You've heard the recommendation of the Legal Affairs Chairman to establish a public hearing date on 17-20 for October 13th, 2020 at 6:52 p.m. All those in favor of establishing such a hearing date, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, 17-20 is given regular course with a referral to the Fire Department and Director of Health Department with a public hearing date of October 13th, 2020 at 6:52 p.m. We're now moving on to matters before the City Council, starting with the City of Leominster Financial Report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We started the fiscal year on July 1 of 2020. $14,189,152.27. We added the free cash from FY19, which was $7,464,000. All of the expenditures thus far this year, if the ones that are on there, even for the pass at the next meeting, we will have spent $1,685,553. Leave us with a balance of $9,903,773.27. And that, Mr. President, is the financial report.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll now, with the consideration of the council, move up under Ways and Means, the appointment of Mr. Redmond.
Okay.
The Ways and Means Chairwoman ready to report?
Yes, I am. Okay, Mr. President, we interviewed Mr. Paul Redmond this evening for about 45 minutes or so. The committee and all council members had the opportunity to review his resume and to ask him questions regarding his background. Mr. Redmond has been involved in this type of work since September of 2009. He worked for Vadar Systems in Mass for 7 years. We really didn't discuss that as much, but it seems that what he was responsible for there gave him the experience to move up to the assistant treasurer collector in the town of Shrewsbury, then for a brief stint with the town of Boxborough, and then where he is currently now in the town of Bellingham. A question was brought up about his short time in Boxborough, but I thought that he effectively answered it, that it was a situation where he learned quite a bit from working there, and it gave him the opportunity to advance in the town of Bellingham. He has been involved, as I said, in municipal finance for many years. He is familiar with the program Munis and the payroll systems that we use in Harper's in Leominster. He has retirement board experience. He set up a web page in answer to Council Pauline Cormier's question regarding public access. He set up a web page in Boxborough with helpful information. There was one question, one concern that I have, and I know Councilor Dabrowski had it as well, was the CMMT certification. However, I am going to put my bets on him that he is going to pass. Unfortunately, the test was delayed because of COVID, and I don't believe that the vetting committee would have brought his name forward to us if they felt as though it was necessity for him to have that certification, and or that they didn't feel that he would earn it. One thing that really stood out for me was, again, in answer to Council Pauline Cormier's question, regarding the public is when he said that he will want to make sure that people realize that the treasurer and collector is not just an office, but a person behind a desk. And I feel as though David LaPlante was that type of person. And I think that with that ideology, Mr. Redmond will grow in his position and hopefully stay with us for a length of time. Maybe we're expecting too much for 29 years, but for a length of time so that he becomes an integral part of what we do in this city. So my recommendation is going to be that we confirm the appointment of Mr. Redmond to the office of Treasurer Collector, and I will ask you to poll my committee.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Before I do that, would you just formally read for the public the notice on our agenda?
I will. It is a measure confirming the mayor's appointment of Paul Redmond to the position of Treasurer Collector for the city of Leominster for a term of 3 years, effective October 5th, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. I'll now check with the Clerk of Ways and Means, Councilor Frida.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a concern, and it's totally based on experience.
Mr. President, you cut out because you're...
Hello?
Hello?
Are we in? Okay.
I can hear you.
We good?
Yeah, I think so.
It went blank for a few minutes. Yeah, I have a concern with the experience piece. Clearly, he's well-spoken and impressive, and it has nothing to do with anything other than a concern of having 3 different positions in 4 years, and in a position that's that important. I'm very familiar with Shrewsbury, and I'm familiar with the process a little bit. And I was around when David LaPlante was hired, and he came to us with 10 years experience from the city of Worcester. And I think that just has a little bit of a difference to me. I know I'm not expecting someone to be able to fill David's shoes, because that won't happen. We won't be here at 10 o'clock at night and see David's car out in the parking lot. We shouldn't expect that from anybody else. But I'm very uncomfortable with the 16,000 population in one community, 6,000 population in another community, and then jumping to a 40,000 plus population in our community. We deal in tax incentives. We're dealing with a lot of issues in the treasurer's office. So again, it's purely based on the lack of experience, the lack of certification, that I have a little bit of a concern, and I'm afraid that I can't support this position.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Dombrowski.
Yes, I think Councilor Frida is making some good points, but I do agree with what the chairperson of the committee said, and I will be in support of this appointment.
Okay, so the majority report from the Ways and Means Committee is to confirm Mr. Redmond. Is there any further discussion by the council?
Yeah, Mr. President, if I could, I just have one more comment.
Well, let me check with the rest of the council.
Right.
I will let you speak again.
Yep.
Is anybody in the council that wants to be heard? Okay, Councilor Frida, you have the floor.
I just wanted to add that I would be very comfortable if this was an assistant treasurer collector's position, or if it was a 1-year position that we could relook at the situation at the end of the year. I think we owe the taxpayer that much to have somebody with that much of a qualification and experience. So that's my position.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else before we vote? Hearing none. Again, the majority report from Ways and Means is to confirm Mr. Redmond. I will start, this requires a roll call vote, and I will start with Councilor Frida.
Nay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Angelini.
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
That shall be recorded as yay. Mr. Redmond's appointment is confirmed by a vote of 8-1. Moving on to finance matters, starting with C14. Is the chairman ready to report?
Mr. President, C-14, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. Creation of $55,105 be made to the treasurer, salary and wages account. Same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is in relation to some retirements that are coming up, one of them being Mr. LaPlante, the other one being Cheryl Erickson and Virginia Pauley. They are all leaving the city of Leominster, and we are required to pay back to them sick leave buyback as well as vacation buyback. And so that is what these funds are being appropriated for. It is part of the agreement of their employment with the city of Leominster. I would ask that hold the committee, but it would be my position that we grant C-14.
Okay, I'll check with your committee. Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
And Councilor Angelini?
We want to honor the city's commitment, so certainly I'm in agreement.
Very well. You've heard the MS recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-14. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes, Councilor Frida?
I support this because obviously they've earned their funding. Does the finance chair, and it's probably not a question for him, but does the finance chair at this point know who's left in that office?
I do not, but I can certainly find out for you. I can make some phone calls tomorrow and let you know by way of the city clerk. I will send her an email and she can forward it.
I can check tomorrow. I just looking at these names that are coming out, experience coming out of that office, and just checking to see who might be left with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Hey.
That shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. C-14 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, ordered that the sum of $55,105 appropriated treasurer salary and wages account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the order, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The order has been adopted by a vote of 9-0. Moving on to C-15. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. C-15, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $500,000 be made to the wastewater capital outlay expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. This is regarding FY19 excess rate proceeds closed out to the general fund. to be used for capital outlay. I did have a conversation today with Roger Brooks, and he did indicate to me that this expenditure is going to be for a Vector truck. And when he told me that, I asked him, I said, what are you doing to these vehicles? I thought we just bought one a few years ago, because I remember I was on the council when the appropriation came through to us, and he indicated to me it's actually the last time was in 2010, so I can't believe it's been that long. But he did say that those vehicles take a lot of abuse. They last about 10 years. What they do is they go down into the sewer system, and they probe the sewer system, and they clean it and suck all kinds of debris out of it. He said sometimes there's, debris from old clay pipes. Sometimes there's things as big as bricks in there, believe it or not. He said it is unbelievable what gets into the system. But there's a much needed piece of equipment to keep our sewer system in the city clean and functioning. And like I said, they do take a lot of abuse. So what's happening here is the current vehicle that they have will be used as a backup. And the current backup, which is a 1998 vehicle, the city, I believe, is going to be trading it in or surplusing it. Roger says it's probably worth about $40,000, and that will be offloaded by the city. And then we will have this new piece of equipment in place, and then the current piece that they're using up front, once again, will become a backup. So after having a discussion with Mr. Brooks about this, it would be my recommendation that we grant C-15 so that they can continue the good work of keeping up with the sewer system in the city. And I'll ask you to poll members of my committee.
Very well. Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
And Councilor Angelini?
I am in agreement as well, Mr. President. Thank you.
You've heard the MS recommendation of Finance to grant C-15. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yay. C-15 is granted by a vote of 9-0. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $500,000 be appropriated to the wastewater capital outlay expense account, the same amount to be transferred from the stabilization fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the order, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the order has been adopted. Moving on to C-16.
C-16, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $550,000 be made to the Water Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. This is regarding the FY 2019 proceeds closed out to the general fund to be used for the Morse Dam repair. Once again, Roger Brooks I believe he's been before us and has spoken about this in the past, that this project was underway. He's indicated to me that that this is the final payment for the dam, and that we were able to do this without borrowing any money, which has saved the taxpayers money, because there's been interest paid. They were able to do this from the internal borrowing and not have to go out to bond for this. So it would be my opinion that we should grant C-16 and make the final payment for the dam repairs, and I'll ask you to poll members of the committee.
Very well. Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I'm in agreement.
And Councilor Angelini?
I'll make it unanimous.
Very well. You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-16. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida.
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr.
Yay.
Councilor Feckley.
Yay.
Councilor Angelini.
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger.
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier.
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
That shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. C-16 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $550,000 be appropriated to the Water Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. This is regarding FY 2019 proceeds closed out to the general fund to be used for more dam repair. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the order, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The order is adopted. Moving on to C-17, is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President, C-17, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor, request an appropriation of $10,000 be made to the Fire Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. I do have two letters from the mayor here. I am going to read them in there very quickly. It'll give a good understanding of what exactly is going on here. The first one is dated September 1st, 2020. Dear members of the City Council, I am writing to request for your support of an appropriation of $10,000 for the Leominster Fire Department for the replacement of the heating and cooling system at Leominster Station 2 on Central Street. The city has received a grant in the amount of $68,490 through the state's Green Communities Program. The $10,000 appropriation, the required match for the grant. The project would replace the current HVAC system, which was first installed in 1987. The unit the department is proposing to install would also include an air filtration system that would help maximize air quality. In addition to healthy air and more reliable heating and cooling, the system would save approximately $1,400 in energy costs per year, plus an estimated $2,500 in maintenance. Since becoming a green community in 2010, the city has received $813,575 in green community funds, which has been used throughout the city and school buildings, including upgrading lighting, replacing boiler at City Hall, and as part of our street light LED conversion program. I would appreciate your support for this appropriation. Sincerely, Dean J. Mazzarella, Mayor. And then he wrote us again on September 8th. Dear members of the City Council, I respectfully request that the appropriations for the Fire Department Capital Outlay Expense Account of $10,000, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund regarding a grant match for replacement of heating and cooling system, $68,490 grant. So with that being said, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, you know, the boiler is replacing 50 years old, and we can do much better with efficiency. And with the grant, I think $10,000 from us is a very small amount to get a total of, I think it would all total $78,500 or so. So I think $10,000 is a very small amount to get that kind of money worth of upgrades. So I would certainly would ask that we approve C-17. That would be my recommendation, and I'll ask you to members of the committee.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
Councilor Angelini?
I would agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Finance Committee to grant C-17. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
and I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. C-17 is granted. Does the chairman have an order?
Yes, Mr. President, order that the sum of $10,000 be appropriated to the Fire Department Capital Outlay Expense Account, the same amount to be transferred from the Stabilization Fund. Move for the adoption of the order.
You've heard the request for the adoption of the order. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by voice vote. All in favor of adopting the order, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, the order is adopted. Moving on to legal affairs and petition 9-21. Is the chairman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. Petition 9-21, Elizabeth Wood, Planning and Development Director, request to amend Article 6, Section 22-34, Special Districts Regulations, Floodplain. We're waiting for some referrals from the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. I believe we also, Mr. President, need to establish a public hearing in this matter. So my recommendation is going to be further time, and I would defer to the city clerk as to when we can have that public hearing, and we should vote on that now.
If you're
Okay,
comfortable,
very well.
If you're comfortable doing it for the next meeting on 10/13, we can definitely do that. I just wasn't sure because we haven't gotten all the referrals back.
You want to go ahead and establish it, Chairman?
Yeah, I think I'd maybe push, maybe vote on the public hearing at the next meeting, just because the planning board, I'm not sure their schedule when they're meeting, you know, in those circumstances.
Okay, that might make some sense. So your recommendation at this point is going to be further time?
Yes, I'd ask you to pull my committee.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr
I agree with that.
and Councilor Cormier.
I also agree. Thank you.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant 9-21 further time. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of granting 9-21 further time, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? By a vote of 9-0, 9-21 is granted further time. Moving on to Ways and Means. We've also already confirmed the appointment of Mr. Redmond. We'll move on to the appointment of Mr. Connor. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. A measure confirming the mayor's extended appointment of William Connor as interim chief assessor for an additional 60 days for the city of Leominster until the office can be filled by a permanent appointment. I know that Council Frida had a question regarding this at our last meeting, and the answer from the city clerk was that they need additional time to advertise. So my recommendation would be to grant this extended appointment, and I'll ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Frida?
Yes, through the chair to the chairman of Ways and Means. Do we know if Mr. Connors has applied for that position?
I do not, but I can find out, and I can let you know.
That was part of my question. The answer that we got was relatively self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But my question was in reference to the difference in the treasurer's position and the assessor's position.
Right.
You know, the level of appointment, interim appointment. So I support it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Dombrowski?
I agree.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of Ways and Means Committee to extend the appointment of William Connor as interim chief assessor for an additional 60 days until the office can be filled by a permanent appointment. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier,
Yay.
and I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The temporary appointment of William Connors is extended as interim chief assessor for an additional 60 days. Moving on to 10-21, is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. 10-21, Romani M. Ingadaro, doing business as Romani Motors, requests a secondhand dealer's license for Romani Motors located at 179 Willard Street, number 208. We have favorable recommendations from the police department and the treasurer and collector. So my recommendation would be to grant the secondhand dealer's license for Romani Motors. And I'll ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Frida
I support that.
and Councilor Dombrowski.
I do as well.
All right, you've heard unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to grant 10-21. Is there any further discussion? This will be by roll call. Councilor Frida,
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Yay.
Councilor Feckley,
Yay.
Councilor Angelini,
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger,
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier,
Yay.
and I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. 10-21 is granted. Moving on to 11-21. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. 11-21, Gennaro L. Hall, doing business as SCB buyer, requests a secondhand dealer's license for SCB buyer located at 502 Lancaster Street, Suite 102. Again, we have favorable recommendations from the police department and the treasurer and collector. So my recommendation would be to grant the secondhand dealer's license, and I'll ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Frida,
Yay. Yes.
and Councilor Dombrowski.
I agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Ways and Means Committee to grant 11-21. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida,
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr,
Yay.
Councilor Feckley,
Yay.
Councilor Angelini,
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger,
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier,
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier.
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. 11-21 is granted. Moving on to public service, beginning with 12-21. Is the chairwoman ready to report?
Yes, Mr. President. 12-21, Susan Shalfo Zephyr, Counselor at Large, and Mark Fidanza, Ward 4 Counselor, requests 2 feedback speed zone signs to be installed at each end of Hill Street. Looking for my paperwork here. I know the recommendations from the police department were not supportive. I think mostly due to, I'll read this into the record. Below, please find a referral given to you by the City Council during the regular meeting on Monday, September 14th, 2020. Officer Julio Ramos has conducted speed studies on Hill Street, which show no speeding problems. We had the Department of Public Works update speed limit signs that have faded and added, quote, children at play, quote, on Hill Street to appease the residents' concerns. The feedback speed zone signs cost roughly $3,000 each. We may have a greater need for speed zone signs in other areas of Leominster where motor vehicle speeds have been demonstrated to be greater than reasonable. If you require any further information, I'm sure, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you, Lieutenant Mark Amico. So we can go to other members of my committee, but my recommendation would be to deny or leave to withdraw without prejudice. Probably be better in case there's something else that comes up.
Okay. I'll check with Councilor Feckley.
I would support leave to withdraw without prejudice.
And Councilor Pauline Cormier.
I would support that as well. I do have a question to the petitioners. If we could get a little background on it, I think would kind of help with that decision making.
Council Shalfo Zephyr, do you want to speak first?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you very much, Council President. I was approached by people up on Hill Street that have young children. And for those of you who know the area, if you come up from Pleasant Street, there's a section when you turn left that gets very narrow and congested near that Lost View Farm property. There's some homes built on the left-hand side of the street. Long story short, some of the neighbors had expressed concern about, kids being up there playing and the road being very narrow and motorists using that particular section as a cut through to get to Elm Street. So, which is where the petition originated. And also the DPW also weighed in, their referral came back, and I'll read this into the record. It's to the city clerk. It says, Caitlin, we would be in support of this petition and funding would need to be requested. So I would actually like to ask for further time because I do want to explore funding options. Lieutenant Amico stated that the signs cost roughly $3,000 each, and they can, but there are other less expensive models that might do the trick up there. And what the neighbors are looking for, is a way to really get people's attention because it's a narrow road. Particularly, it narrows down in that one spot where there are several different houses. So my request as the petitioner would be to ask for further time.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. As the ward councilor in 4, I would echo Councilor Shalfo Zephyr's comments. I too have fielded a number of complaints up there relative to speed and from some very concerned residents. I would also be supportive of further time to investigate this a little bit more carefully. But I think where we stand procedurally is we are waiting for, I guess, Councilor Pauline Cormier's position on the report.
Mr. President, thank you. And I appreciate that feedback. It makes my recommendation much easier, and I would support further time.
Okay. So do I have this right? Then Councilor Feckley, you're still leave to withdraw, or do you have a different position?
Mr. President, actually, I would like to reconsider my vote after hearing from the petitioners, and I'm going to apologize that I probably should have done that originally. I would very much support further time. The safety of children is more important than money, and I think Council Shalfo Zephyr has a good point that there might be something that is less expensive, but would be just as effective.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Frida, do you want to speak further on this before I ask for Council to weigh in?
Yep. After listening to the two of you, I have no issue with further time. Procedurally, though, I would have thought you'd come back to the chair before you went to the other members. That's all right. The result is the same.
My apologies. It's just that Councilor Pauline Cormier hadn't weighed in at all yet, so I wanted to let her finish
I was talking about Councilor Feckley.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. My apologies, Councilor. Okay, but thank you for reconsidering that. So the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee is to give 12-21 further time. Is there any further discussion by the council?
Just one more comment.
Yes, Councilor.
I think we need to. Hopefully, there is something that's less expensive, something that can be resolved because we have these conditions all over the city, and if we do something in one area, we're going to be getting barraged by requests in other areas, which is fine. We can afford to do it. So hopefully, there is something that can resolve the issue.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion? Okay, again, you've heard the unanimous recommendation of Public Service to grant 12-21 further time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? by a vote of 9-0, 12-21 is given further time. Moving on to 13-21, is the chairman ready to report?
I am. 13-21, Susan Shalafuzeffer, Counselor at Large, Miguel Feckley, Ward 1 Counselor. Request that a crosswalk be installed at Nutting Drive and Prospect Street. The recommendation...
Would the chair be interested in entertaining the petitioner's current position on that before you proceed, or do you want to proceed with your report first?
Doesn't matter. You can go ahead if you guys want.
All right. Well, I think it may streamline things a little bit. Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr or Councilor Feckley, do you want to weigh in?
Councilor Shalafo-Zephyr, why don't you go forward?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Feckley. This petition was put in, both Councilor Feckley and I were approached by people up who live on Nutting Drive and had asked about a crosswalk from Nutting Drive across Prospect Street to the other side. The side of Prospect where Nutting Drive comes into Prospect, there is no sidewalk on that side. And this family was particularly interested in having safe access across the road, across Prospect Street. We all know how busy that is. And I do want to thank Lieutenant Amico for the time that the police department put in. They went up there, they evaluated the situation, took photographs, and I understand their concerns that we could not put a crosswalk from Nutting Drive across Prospect in that area because of the long curve. The sight lines in that particular area just are not conducive to crossing there safely. And the DPW also weighed in with a similar recommendation, saying that for a variety of reasons, they would not support the location, to quote Mr. Racine, is on the inside of a curve and lacks proper safe sight distances. So with those recommendations in hand, as one of the petitioners, I would ask to give 1321 leave to withdraw.
Okay, and Councilor Feckley, as a petitioner, are you in accord with that?
I am. I concur with that. Leave to withdraw.
Okay. All right. So, Councilor Frida, I hope that helps a little bit. Respect the report.
Well, I think it was pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the other one had some issues, but this one was pretty clear. Either you can or you can, and obviously we can't for a number of reasons. But I want to read this into the record as well.
Sure. Go ahead.
Officer Julio Ramos, who's assigned to the Leominster Police Department Traffic Bureau, was assigned to investigate this request from the City Council. Below are the police department findings concerning the request for a crosswalk in that area. Officer Ramos responded to Prospect and Nutting Drive to investigate the need for a crosswalk in this area. He stated certain criteria has to be met under ADA guidelines. The crosswalk has to be handicapped accessible, and signs must be put up to indicate that there is a crosswalk up ahead. One issue with this location is that there is a long curve in the roadway on Prospect Street, and again, there were photos provided, and heading in an easterly direction as you approach Nutting Drive. There is a posted sign indicating such, which is another photo attached. The sidewalk further down the road, down the street on Prospect, another photo, on a straightaway, and there is a good visibility in both directions. Concerning the crosswalk requested on Nutting Drive, there is good visibility headed in the westerly direction, but eastbound traffic has very poor visibility approaching Nutting Drive because of this curve. It is my belief that putting in a crosswalk at this location would be very costly and quite possibly dangerous to any pedestrians attempting to cross in that area. Also, please note that the speed limit may be 35 miles per hour in that area, but it's not uncommon for vehicular speeds to be greater. Please see photographs 4 and 5, which show that no sidewalk exists on Nutting Drive, which would also be problematic when attempting to install an ADA compliant, safe, and efficient crosswalk in that area. While Officer Ramos was in the area investigating this crosswalk request, he stated to me that he observed no one attempting to cross the street in that area. There is disagreement with the Police Department Traffic Division findings and recommendations. A traffic study should be proposed. Should you need anything further, please do not hesitate to contact me, Lieutenant Mark Amico. And we also have referral back from the DPW. Dear Caitlin, the Leominster Department of Public Works has reviewed the petition to install a crosswalk at Nutting Drive and Prospect Street. The DPW cannot approve the petition as submitted. This location is on the inside of a curve and lacks proper safe sight distances. Please let us know if you have any questions. Just to go back to Lieutenant Amico's comments earlier, there's something else that probably could be proposed. He's saying 35 miles an hour in that area is not uncommon. Maybe looking into reducing it to 25 might work. We do have that provision in the city now, so that might be a thought. But the recommendation would be to leave to withdraw without prejudice.
Very well. Councilor Feckley?
Yes, I agree with that. And I want to thank Lieutenant Amico also for his good work.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Pauline Cormier?
I agree.
You heard the unanimous recommendation of the Public Service Committee to give 13-21 leave to withdraw without prejudice. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilor Angelini?
I'd just like to give a hat tip to Officer Ramos and Lieutenant Amico. I found that report to be extremely helpful, and I would encourage those type of reports for any further recommendations that the council should ask for. They were well done, and it's very easy to base a decision after reading their report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Angelini. Any additional discussion?
This is Councilor Zephyr. I just want to, echo Councilor Angelini's comments. It was very helpful for me to have the thoughtful analysis that the police department did when I was trying to explain the reason to the people who had requested the crosswalk. So that made it much easier to explain to, people worried about public safety and worrying about crossing Prospect Street. So I very much appreciate the thorough and thoughtful job that they did on this.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. Any additional discussion? All right. Again, the recommendation is to give 13-21 leave to withdraw. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? No one's opposed. By a vote of 9-0, 13-21 is given leave to withdraw without prejudice. All right, moving on to, there is no new business. Moving on to old business and the second reading of an ordinance, formally 1-21. Is the chairman of Legal Affairs ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. President, petition 1-21, David R. Cormier, request to install a stop sign against southwestbound drivers on Comstock Road at Birchcroft Road. My recommendation is to adopt the second reading. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Zephyr?
I agree with that.
And Councilor Cormier?
I agree as well.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to grant the second reading of the ordinance. Is there any further discussion? This will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The second reading of the ordinance is granted. Moving on to the second reading of an ordinance, formally 2-21. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. David R. Cormier, request to amend Chapter 13, Section 13-34 to read the following. No parking on Albert Drive southbound from the north intersection of Central Street, rear of 424 Central Street, to the southernmost point of the rear of 424 Central Street property. Right side only, Albert Drive northbound along the length of 40 Albert Drive, right side only. My recommendation is to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. I'd ask you to recommend.
Very well. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr
I agree with that.
and Councilor David Cormier.
I do agree, and I'd just like to ask, Mr. President, Madam Clerk, did you run this because we amended this, did you run this by the police department, the traffic division, one more time?
Yes,
And did they respond?
it was still favorable.
Okay, all right. I am all set with this then as well, Mr. President.
Okay, so you've heard the unanimous recommendation of Legal Affairs to grant the second reading or adopt the second reading of the ordinance. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, I'm
Yes,
still
Councilor Frida.
in non-agreement.
Yes.
It's horrendous down there, and I don't think there's going to be enough enforcement. I think it really needs to be pushed for the the building inspector to enforce the ordinances there.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other additional discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, this is Council Beckley. The last time I did not it. That area, it's very difficult to decide who the guilty parties are down there. They're just parking crazy pants down there, to use the vernacular. But I think that this is better than nothing, and hopefully it will, clear some area there, and for emergency purposes or what have you. So I am going to support it this time.
Very well. Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else want to weigh in before we vote? Okay, hearing none. This will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Nay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 8-1. The second reading of the ordinance is adopted. Moving on to the second reading of an ordinance, formerly 7-21. Is the chairman ready to report?
I am, Mr. President. John Dombrowski, Counselor at Large, request to amend Chapter 13, Section 13-77 to read the following. Install a stop sign against eastbound drivers on Birchcroft Road at Comstock Road. My recommendation is to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Very well. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr
I agree.
and Councilor David Cormier.
I also agree.
You've heard the unanimous recommendation of the Legal Affairs Committee to adopt the second reading of the ordinance. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be by roll call. Councilor Frida?
Yay.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yay.
Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
Yay.
Councilor Feckley?
Yay.
Councilor Angelini?
Yay.
Councilor Ardinger?
Yay.
Councilor Pauline Cormier?
Yay.
Councilor David Cormier?
Yay.
I shall be recorded as yea by a vote of 9-0. The second reading of the ordinance is adopted. Moving on to table petitions upon which action is proposed. And this is C-54 of fiscal year 2020. And this is before Legal Affairs. Counselor, are you taking this off the table?
I'd like to do some quick committee work, Mr. President.
Sure. Yes.
This is a petition where we had asked for additional information, including input from the various unions. It was put on the table for that to happen. That didn't happen. And we sort of got a letter from the mayor without any other explanation asking us to take it off the table for action. My preference would be to leave it on the table. And I'd ask and perhaps inquire of the mayor, what's changed between now and then, and whether any of that information we requested is going to be forthcoming. So my request would be to leave this on the table. I'd ask you to poll my committee.
Okay, very well. Councilor Shalfo Zephyr?
I agree with leaving it on the table. I just don't think we have enough information to do anything further with it.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. And Councilor David Cormier.
Well, if I may, I thought, did we get an email about this? Madam Clerk, did you email us a response?
Yes, I did, from the Superiors Union 282, Supervisors Union 282 from the police. They drafted something up and I emailed it to you guys.
Well, I believe that they did not give a favorable a recommendation on this, and they basically couldn't come to an agreement. So, I mean, just reading between the lines, I think at this point, you know, everybody's done and the decision is ours, and I'm ready to make a decision on it, quite frankly. I don't mind taking it off the table, personally. I'm ready.
This is Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. I did read that email from the Superior Officers Union, and my understanding of it was that the two parties, the city and the union, had reached an agreement, which the union brought back to its members, and the members didn't ratify whatever the terms were. So the letter asked for further time. My understanding of that was that the union was looking for further time to see if they could work some of these things out. So I don't have a problem leaving it on the table because I think it still is an open question as to whether or not the city and the officers union can reach an agreement.
Okay, well,
Mr. President,
yeah.
Just as the chair, my interpretation of that letter is consistent with Councilor Zephyr's. I also believe there are at least two other unions involved with the police department. And I believe we also got this letter prior to putting this on the table, is my memory. I could be wrong on that. But, you know, my position again is I would leave it on the table, on the table. If I am forced to vote on this tonight, I would not be in support.
All right. Well, I mean, I guess per our rules, these come off the table one of two ways, right? Either the chairman of the subcommittee or three counselors. And it sounds to me like neither of those things are present, right?
Correct.
I mean, there hasn't been a request from three counselors to take this off the table, and apparently you're not, as the chair of the committee, you're not inclined to take it off the table. So I think that's where it stays, unless anybody's got a different interpretation of the rules.
I don't.
No, I agree with leaving it where it is.
Okay. All right. So it remains tabled. Anything under the community calendar? Okay. Hearing nothing.
I have a comment. It's not under community calendar, but it's just you should all have received a sketch of the new police station that I sent out. We voted on it last Thursday, and it's kind of exciting. Took a long time, a lot of work. We're just waiting for a final dollar amount now. There's still some issues with the land, compensatory storage, and floodplain issues. As soon as those are resolved, they'll be able to put the numbers together, and hopefully we'll have a presentation soon from the architect and the project manager. So looking forward to that down the road.
Okay, Council, I appreciate the brief update. If you would like to, inform the public about through the council meeting of, the progress, that would be great. And let me know ahead of time. We'll put on the agenda so the public will know. I appreciate that. Anything under the community calendar? Hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion. Thank you, Councilor Angelini. Is there a second?
Seconded.
David Cormier.
Seconded by Councilor Shalfo Zephyr. I think she beat you to the punch. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, too.